Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for attending. My name is Bonnie Aleshire. I am with SEK. I am a certified QuickBooks ProAdvisor. Been with the firm for 18 years now. I am the accounting services supervisor, and I assist clients with QuickBooks, with all aspects of accounting. So welcome to the group. Just a couple things first. Please feel free to submit questions. You can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can send them through the chat. Just please make sure that you send those questions to all so that everyone can see what question is being presented. And also at the end of the session, we will send out a survey, and I know we all hate those additional emails after one of these, but it does help me to better tailor these group sessions and for the moving forward. So I will go ahead and share my screen. We have a lot to cover today. I'm going to cover things like talking briefly about the chart of accounts, for the DCED chart of accounts using classes. We're going to talk about customizing reports, talking about the report center itself, creating budgets, and just briefly touch on the federal and state e-pay directly out of QuickBooks for your payroll tax payments. So we will talk about that here in just a few. So that's what we're going to cover. I'm going to share my screen now, and you can see I have got, where you will see, I have got a QuickBooks file open that, let me see here. Here we go, and you should be able to see my screen up. Christina, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I've got a file open for any town borough. So there's a bunch of data in here. I thought this would be a great way to kind of go over things more the visual. And I have a lot of activity in this that'll help us along the way. I have some preset reports and things that you may find helpful. So first, we're going to talk about the chart of accounts. Of course, you know, we have the DCED chart of accounts. So I'm going to go over here to list and down to chart of accounts. You will notice, let me see, count. We are going to hide my inactive accounts. Now you can see I've got what is actually in my chart of accounts. I do like to use account numbers. That seems to make things much easier, especially when you're working with the auditors at the end of the year and trying to enter journal entries and so forth. You can come over to preferences if you're not using account numbers, and you can turn those on simply by going to, I think it comes under accounting, under your preferences, and check mark the use account numbers. One other thing that should always be marked is require accounts. I know that seems kind of odd to have to mark. You always want accounts there, but that can cause an issue if it's not marked. It can cause you to go out of balance. I've seen that happen before a couple of times, but always make sure that your require accounts is marked. But again, if you go to list, I'm sorry, down to edit and then to your preferences, and go to company preferences on the accounting, you're going to see where you can select that use account numbers. The preferences here is also a great way to kind of customize QuickBooks. I know sometimes we get so involved in the day-to-day activities that we wish something would work a little bit better. Or work for us a little better, and we just don't know how to make it do that. Going to your preferences is one way to kind of streamline. Anything that comes up under my preferences tab is specifically to your login if you have more than one person in the office logging in. The company preferences apply to anyone that logs in. You have to be the administrator in order to change those company preferences. So there's a couple under here that I find helpful. One is the closing date on the QuickBooks file. This is one I always get some questions on. So typically after the audit at the end of the year, you would want to come in once you've entered your journal entries, or a lot of times I like to do it right after I've sent the copy of the file over to the auditors. I will come in and close my book so I can't accidentally change any information in the QuickBooks file for last year that the auditors are going to be working on. So you can come in here and set that closing date, or once you have entered the journal entries, you can go back in and set that closing date as well. And I do like to assign it a password, only because if you just put the closing date in, it's going to come up and say, oh, you're going to post a transaction to a closed period. You sure you want to do that? It's so easy to click through those little messages. Yep, go ahead. But if you have a password set up in the file, it's going to require you to type that password. So it's just an extra step to make sure that you're just not clicking through those screens and you stop and think about what you're doing. And do you really want to do that? And in most cases, you don't, once you have provided the auditors the QuickBooks file and the audit is complete. So just a FYI there, I use that a lot. One of the other things is whether or not you want to automatically use credits. If you're using the Accounts Payable feature, which is to enter a bill and then go back and pay those bills, you can tell it whether or not to automatically apply credits. I think a lot of times it's automatically checked. I don't like to use it automatically. I like to go in and assign credits when I'm ready to assign credits to a vendor bill. You can turn on and off features to kind of streamline your home page. And under general, the one thing I like to do here under general for my preferences is I always like to use today's date as a default, so that when I go in and just go into create a check, it automatically comes up to today's date rather than using the last entered date as a default. So I want to use today's date as a default. So if that is something that's going on in your file, you might want to go in and change that. Using today's date as a default just seems to be much easier for me. You can also turn off pop-up messages. So I don't like those pop-ups to keep coming up and bothering me. And the other thing is I like to turn off, I like to not check the beep when recording a transaction. I just don't automatically want to hear that. So if you want to turn that beep off, just simply uncheck this box in your preferences. But again, those are all under my preferences, not company preferences. So just throw that out there. It's something I hadn't planned on covering, but I figured this was a good opportunity to do so. So when adding your adding account to your chart of accounts, first, always make sure that you're checking for municipalities. You want to make sure that you're checking the DCED chart of accounts. You're categorizing it correctly. You want to come down here to the account button and hit new and set up your account. Income and expense are up here, but there are other account types you have down here, which is other income, other expense. Other income is where I would put like interest income. And then once you make the selection, you hit continue. And because you have account numbers turned on, you're going to have to enter the account number and the account name. And then if it's a sub account, you're going to have to select what it's a sub account under. So we'll hit cancel there. You can come in and make accounts inactive if you recall correctly. When I first opened this up, you saw a bunch of X's over to the side. So I can show my inactive accounts. These are the ones that I've closed out. And then you can, if you have got multiple accounts that you want to make inactive, so let's say these I want to make inactive, I can do that simply by clicking the X when I'm showing the inactive accounts. But what if they're not showing? I can come in here and hide them. But if I click on the account that I want to make inactive, I can just simply come down here and hit make account inactive, and it'll go away. One thing you don't want to do is make accounts inactive with any balance that is in them. I've seen that happen before. You would think that the system wouldn't allow you to do that, but it does. So you do not want to make accounts inactive if they have a balance in them. We talked a little bit about sub accounts. One thing I really wanted to touch on today is using classes, because I don't think we use that enough, or at least use it to where we can get the most benefit from it. So a few examples. I'm going to close out of this screen, and under list, you're going to see you can have a class list. Now, if you don't have classes turned on in your file, you can come over to your preferences. Again, come back into preferences, and you can, let's see if I can remember where they're at. Right here under the accounting, under company preferences, you can turn on your class tracking. You can tell it to prompt you to assign classes to every single transaction. I'm not sure you want to do that. It's just whatever your preference is. I normally don't like this marked because I don't use classes for everything. But you can mark that, and that will give you the option to add classes. Until that's marked, you will not be able to find or set up classes in your file. Then you can come under list and go down to your class list, and you can set up classes just simply by clicking this button below and hitting new. So I guess the question is, what do I use classes for? Well, one thing is, you can see I have a grant here, and that is a good way to, good utilization of classes. I like to track what for many of us now, we have the ARPA funds that we want to make sure, or just monitor what we're spending that money on. It's a nice way to get an extra report out of the file just on your ARPA expenditures. I like to see bulk pickup. So any special projects that I have going on, like a special road project, or as a salt shed project, you're building a salt shed and you want to track all those expenses on that. A sidewalk project, any of those types of projects that you want to see the expenses put together, you can always, once the project is done, you can come down as an example and make that project inactive, or that class inactive, so it doesn't show up anymore. Once it's completed and you've done all the reporting on it, for a grant, it's the same way. I can come in here, I've got a low volume road grant, and I can, as I'm assigning expenses, which I'll show you in just a minute, I can come in and select that to assign the transactions to it as I am making purchases or have contractors coming in. And then once the grant is done, I've done all the reporting. I know a lot of times with grants, they require a special reporting on those, or at least a report showing all your expenditures, the totals and so forth. There is some reporting that needs to be done. That's a great way to accomplish that. So let's say for this low volume road grant, I can go to, go to my vendors. I'm going to cut a check to So check to one of my road guys. Country seal coating, I think it's one of them. So country seal coating, and we're going to do a $5,000 check to them for some work, and it's going to go under contracted services highway. So what I can do is come over here, select the low volume road grant, hit save and close. Now at any time, I can come back over to my list. So there's a couple different ways you can run reports. I can come back to the class list, click on that low volume road grant. I know there's more transactions in here than that. Click reports. I can do a quick report, and you can see where this is going to track the expenditures on that. If you receive your grant funds in, you also, when you record that deposit, you should put that deposit to the low volume road grant as well. Let's see if I've got something. I'll just select a deposit. And do this one. So now when I come back over to my report, now you can see I've got a deposit in here plus a check. The other thing you can do instead of going to this, because this is going to give you some pretty basic reports, we can come over to the report center. I can run a profit and loss by class. I can customize this report down to where I only want to see, I go to filters, I can select my class, select the low volume road grant, and now you get a P&L or a profit and loss by class. And this could be just for the low volume road grant. And you can see expenditures from the beginning of time. If I come up here and select all, okay, you can see I've got some engineering that was posted there, the $5,000 check that I just put in. And this is a great way to track these grants and have a report all the time on those expenditures. Remember also that you can always drill down into this. If you need to provide detail, you can always drill down into these transactions. If you've got something that it looks like you've posted to the wrong class, you can always come back in and change it. You can change it here. Of course, that's the beauty of QuickBooks, is always being able to go back in and change information, close out the columns that you don't want by just getting that plus sign up there and closing them out. You can also rename this. If I come up to customize and go over to my header and footer, I can come into the report title and select low volume road grant report. Hit OK. Now I've got that, and I can memorize that report to come back to it later. So click memorize low volume road grant report, hit OK. Now, if I come back over to reports and go to my memorized reports, you're going to see that low volume road grant report is sitting in there. So that's one way to handle reporting on grants. And I know that was one of the questions that I had as well. Projects, I do that for highway projects, sidewalk projects. If I'm trying to track the funds that we're spending and I'm paying it out of one checking account, it's always a great way to go back in again, going to my list and going to my class list. I use this for ARPA funds. I like to see bulk pickup, and you can, what the nice thing about bulk pickup on this one or any of the class tracking, if you run a P&L by class, you can run that for several years. That way I can see the history on over the years on those activities as well. One other thing I wanted to mention about using classes, one of the things that I use it for, and I'll show you what I do. You know, we have the FHWA 536, the highway use report, I believe it is. It's coming up. It's going to be due on September 15th. I actually spoke to the office that administers that last week, I believe it was. And they're expecting the website to be up, I think this week or next week, so you can go ahead and do the reporting on that. But what I like to do, so I don't have to go back and recreate the wheel every year with these highway use reports, is I have a memorized report set up. And if I come over here to my memorized report and go to, I can either go to the memorized report list, or I can come over here to miscellaneous reports. And you're going to see that I have the FHWA 536 report already set up. So I can select my date range. And now all the transactions that I would need to monitor and record on that report, I have already set up here. Makes it a whole lot easier to go in. Once you get it set up the first time, you can just go in and run this report, and you can use this to do the reporting needed each year. I also set up, as an example, if you looked at that, miscellaneous reports, I also have a workers' comp audit report set up so that I know what's there. It's everything I need, and I can just run that report. Makes it a lot easier, and email it to the auditor. So that makes things easier as well. I also like to use this for liquid fuels, that out of my liquid fuels fund, of which, speaking about liquid fuels fund, one of the questions I often get is, do you prefer one file with everything in it, one QuickBooks file, or do I want multiple QuickBooks files for each type of fund? I like to run multiple funds, only because I think it makes it easier. I keep a separate payroll fund. Depending on how big the municipality is, I find it easier to have one payroll fund, and that way I can do reimbursements from my general fund or my electric fund or whatever other funds, municipal funds. I can do those reimbursements after each payroll. So I like to have separate funds instead of having a ton of the due to, due from accounts. If you looked at the chart of accounts in here, you notice I have due from electric fund, due from sewer. And I have the same thing here, due to water, due to electric, due to sewer. So if I have the multiple funds set up, I can just do those reimbursements on a payroll basis, each payroll reimbursing. But again, this is something that's going to vary based on your municipality. You know, what funds do you have? You know, what activity do you have? How big you are, as to whether or not this would actually apply to you. But I find doing the reimbursements and having one payroll account, and doing the reimbursements, each payroll makes it a whole lot easier, at least from my perspective. So that's typically how I handle it. So talked about classes. So I want to take a look at some of the questions we had. So we talked about how do you set up classes and what reports do you do with different classes split out. So again, if we go back over here to reports and look at a profit and loss by class, you will notice if I run this for all, you're going to notice a whole lot of classes, ARPA funds or the bulk pickup, low road grants, different properties, different skate park, sidewalk project, another grant, all the different ones. I've even seen people track them by vehicle. I don't use it that way, but it is definitely something that you can do if you have enough vehicles that you want to track the expenses on each one. That's easy enough to be done. So, and the other thing you can do, so let's say you want to look at, and one thing, I'll use this FHWA 536 report as an example. I come up to reports, go down to memorized, go to my 536 report. So this just shows that 1 year, but what if I want to see it year over year? You can do that. This, open up my date range, but then I come up here to customize, because otherwise it's going to show all the years together. But if I come up here and use it to show by year, put the column, display the columns by year, now I've got year over year. Now it'll compare. So I think if I come down and uncheck the previous year, see if it does, yep, does what I wanted it to do. It'll show 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. A lot of times when I'm filling out reports, and I'm not sure where I put something, I like to have the prior year and the prior year report that I filed to be able to compare to make sure I handled it in the same way. And this is a good way to get that comparative report year over year to see or to ensure that you're being consistent with your reporting. So something to keep in mind there. So you just have to make sure that you go up and select display the columns by year once you do your date range up here. Another thing that's worth mentioning, if you want to get rid, if you ever run a report and you have, let's see, and I probably already have it selected here, but if you have lines that have zeros in them, let's see if I can give you an example. Okay, so if I click this advanced, I don't want to see any rows that have zeros in them. You can select that, hit OK. And it will, because a lot of times you come in here and you'll see lines that have zeros in them. Okay, if the whole line does, then it's just going to be a whole row worth full of zeros. A good example would be, and I'll show you what I mean. See all these? Now I've got a report. There's nothing that applies in these rows for this report. But if I come down here, that's when I select it all. Active is what it defaults to, but if I want to hit non-zero lines, it'll take all of those out. It just cleans the report up, makes it a lot nicer to work with, a lot easier on the eyes, and just gets rid of, extra rows that you don't really need, that have no financial data in them. So that is a nice way to clean your report up. It looks a little bit better. Nice way to filter it down. So any other questions there? And you guys can unmute yourself if you have any other questions on class reports. I know this is something I use classes a lot for more than just municipality reporting. I use them all the time. I like them for projects that I have going on I need to keep track of. I have it for any grants that are going on. So if you have any other reports that you're looking for or have questions on classes, please feel free to chime in and ask the question. I would be happy to answer it if I can. Okay, so another question I had, which was an interesting one, was end of year journal entries. How do you apply them so they don't show up next year? Okay, hold on a minute. We got a question. Where is the report located? Again, where is the report located by class? Okay, sure. If we go to reports, go down to company and financial, and go to, this is the reports that I work off of all the time, profit and loss by class. then you would have to filter this down. You can also go to your list under class list, and you can pull reports up from here. You can simply select the class that you want to report on. You can run a quick report, which will just show deposits, checks, and so forth in just this very simplistic view. Report. You can report on all classes. Profit and loss by class you can run from here. It'll do the same thing. It'll report on all classes. And then you can just filter it down as well. And you're welcome. Hope that helped. So, journal entries. We love the year-end journal entries. A lot of times at the end of the year, auditors will give us journal entries that we need to record into our file. And a lot of times those journal entries may involve an entry to accounts payable, depending on your basis and how your audit is done, the financial reporting and so forth. They may need to record things like accounts payable at the end of the year. Again, each municipality is a little different or unique, has their own set of audit criteria. So you want to make sure that you are getting those entries in. But the important thing about, say, accounts payable, and if you have accounts receivable, two things to remember. Anytime you get a journal entry that is part of, includes an entry to accounts payable, you want to make sure that you're getting detail on that. That's sometimes kind of hard to do. If you look at, let me do this. If I do a journal entry, go under company, make general journal entry. So let's say I run on cash basis, but my municipality, the audit, end of year audit is on modified cash basis. So you have to pick up accounts payable that are due at the end of the year. We may want to go in. One of the journal entries you have may be to record accounts payable. Anytime you have an accounts payable or an accounts receivable journal entry, you must select a vendor or a customer. One of the things I like to do with this, if I know that this is just an audit entry per se, and I'm going to just back it out the next, on the next year, it's just to put it in to get my reports degree. But then I want to fix it so it's not showing up next year. And I have a feeling this is probably what is being referred to. So the auditors say, okay, I've got to record accounts payable, let's say one of the things I like to do is to set up for accounts payable. Set up kind of like a dummy vendor. And this is what I recorded to. And then I would have the office expense. I would have different accounts down here. And this is going the wrong way, by the way. So do 500 here. Engineering. We're going to do 1,500 to make it pretty simple. So we've put this in. The accounts payable line is the only line that needs to have a vendor or customer on. Okay, well, a vendor. If it's accounts receivable, it has to have a customer. And I would do the same thing. I would do year-end audit adjustment -C for customer, or AR, and the AP, you could do year-end audit AP. So we're going to hit save and close that. But you know that the only time this applies, You see, that was where the closing date, I'm posting this to a closed period, and it prompted me to enter the password instead of just hitting OK. Now, so now we've got this auditor adjustment sitting in accounts payable. We go to vendors and payables, and now I've got this adjustment in here. And I don't want it to be there. I just want to, you put it in just to do it for the audit, but then you want it to come back out. So what I can do, I can go to that report I was just in. I can double click on this year-end audit adjustment. I can turn around, double click on this adjustment because it's really not something that needs to be paid. You're taking care of it however you normally handle your bills. This is just year-end audit recording. So I can come in here and I can reverse this back out. Just reverse it. It automatically will move it to the next day, which would be 1/1 of the current year. It's save and close. Yep, it reversed the entry for me, did everything it needed to do. Now, if I go in, you're going to see it goes in and comes back out. So now you're going to see where that's out of this list. But I still have this line here. Why is it there? I want it to go away. I do not want it to show up. One of the things you can do is you would have to apply it. So if I go to vendors and pay bills, you're going to see that adjustment come up. We're simply going to apply. Once I click that, I've got a credit sitting down here. I'm going to tell it to accept that credit. Now the amount to pay is 0. I'm going to do it as of 1/1/2022. Pay selected bills. You have to do this to get it out of the accounts payable list. Now, when I go and run that report again, it's gone. So you have to apply them to each other to get them completely gone out of your AP report. Not everybody uses accounts payable. Not everybody uses accounts receivable. It does depend on your municipality and whether or not that applies and how your audit is done. But that is one way so they could go away and you don't have to deal with them for the next year. And I'm assuming that that is primarily what you're referring to, is getting those end of the year journal entries out of there. Same thing happens if you have accounts receivable. You don't track it all year long. You're depending on your situation, but at the end of the year, because of the audit, they need to record receivables. So you're going to have to do that journal entry, select the customer. You can set up a dummy customer and then turn around and reverse that entry so that it comes back out on 1/1 of the next day if you have a calendar year. And then you can apply them against each other so it is completely gone. Just doesn't clutter up your QuickBooks file. So I hope that answered that question. I know that it doesn't apply to everyone. Not everybody deals with these the same way. And again, it is very dependent on your municipality. Another question we had, I want to try to hit these questions. So I hope this is helpful. What is the proper way to record ACH or e-check payments? Well, one of the ways that I do this is to actually go into banking and do a write check. So if I have, as an example, I have something coming out of my account every month. So I would essentially come in here, uncheck the print later. You don't need to enter a bill if that's your typical process, is to use the accounts payable process and enter a bill and then go back and pay bill. You don't have to do that. Some municipalities do that. Some just use the write checks feature and put everything in a print queue and then just go back and print your checks later. What I would do is either do ACH or ePay. You do not have to have a number in the QuickBooks Desktop Edition. and put your date. So let's say we have, and I see this more often now, let's say we have a loan payment, or even health insurance. I see that being another one that comes out of an account on a regular monthly basis, automatic ACH payment. So we could do ACH and it comes out on the first of every month. And set this up so that on the first of every month, high mark, and I'm going to do $2,000. Well, this is going to come out every month. Now, if you want to automate it, you could memorize this transaction and it really works good. So if it is an arrangement where the transaction is automatically coming out of your account, memorize this transaction. You can come up here and tell it exactly what you need. So in 2022 high mark, I want it to automatically record my transaction. I wanted to do it monthly. My next date is going to be February 1st. And there's going to be 11 left in the year because I'm going to record the first one. So now I've got it all set up. I hit OK. Now I'm going to record this January transaction and I have to hit save and close to do that. There's a couple things I want you to know about this. So we're hitting two things. One, we're talking about memorized transactions. Okay. And two, the correct way to record those ACH or e-check payments. So this is how I would do it. So you record the transaction, hit save and close. Yep. I want to record it. Now I also have a memorized, I've set up a memorized transaction. So if I come back under list and go to my memorized transaction list, you can see this 2022 high mark up here. If I double click on this, now it's set to the next date to automatically post on 2/1 of 2022. So when February would have rolled around, I would have gotten, when I opened QuickBooks that day, a pop-up that says, oh, you have a memorized transaction. Do you want to post it? Yep, go ahead and post it. So because we're in the past, I'm going to hit yes. It says this transaction is more than 90 days. Yeah, I want to post it. So until I hit save and close, it does not post the transaction. Okay. If I X out of this, it will not post it. Just because I have $2,000 in here, you got a new employee. So now your premium's gone up. So there's going to be a new amount. You can always change the transaction. You can always go back and change it. Again, the beauty of QuickBooks is it's so user friendly. So I can go back in and change this to 2,500, still posting to the same account. I can add any notes here that I want to, save and close. Yeah, I want to post it. Now the transaction's been recorded. You notice that the next date is now 3/1, automatically set to monthly. But what if now we added an employee? I need to go back and change this so that the following month in March, it automatically is the $2,500. I can update the amount that is actually in my memorized transaction. So what I want to do is come in here, change it. Okay. You can update the amount, select memorize again. It's going to say, okay, it's already a memorized transaction. Would you like to replace it or add a new one? I want to replace it. Now I'm just going to exit out because I do not want to hit save and close. Otherwise it's going to record it. And I'm not in March yet. So I just X out. No, I don't want to record it right now. But now my memorized transaction is already at $2,500. This is a great way to do those automatic transactions that are coming out all the time out of your account. The things we can do, such as memorize transactions, memorize reports, those are the things that can make our job a lot easier. It streamlines everything, the less you have to set up. You can even do a memorized transaction for a bill. If you do the enter bills, pay bills, You can do it for any automatic ACH payments that come out of your account. It's just a great way if you want to. I'm trying to think of what else would apply. I don't have any other ones set up in this account. If you get a deposit posted on a regular day every month, you can automatically set up, same way, go to banking, make deposits, and I believe you can memorize, edit, memorize deposit. And it'll do the same thing. It comes up and you have to give it a name, tell it how you want to set it up, and then hit OK. And it will memorize the deposit for you. So it just kind of makes your job a little bit easier, streamlines things. Any questions on that? Did I answer the question about the e-payments? Hopefully. If not, let me know. One thing that I also wanted to talk about, I'm wondering which one to hit next. What is the most efficient way to do 1099s when you have multiple company files? And I have this exact scenario, and it can be mind-numbing at times. So what you need to do with that is to set up your 1099s in each company file. So one that I have is going to be, I have five company files. I have the general fund, electric fund, water, sewer, and then I have the recreation fund, because we have contractors that do work out of each one of those. Highway is another one that you need to think about, that sometimes can have contractors in it. So you've got to compile all of those 1099 reports into one to do one set. If you have one EIN, you have to do one set of 1099s. Mine's a little different that I work with, in that my municipal authority has one EIN and the borough has the other EIN. So I have two separate sets of 1099s to do, because we have different EINs. So I have 3 company files on one that I have to accumulate the data and do the reporting. The other I have to do out of another. So the only way I know to do this, first off, the problem is you cannot modify 1099s in QuickBooks. You can W-2s, but I'm not aware that you can modify 1099s in QuickBooks. So what you need to do is go in, what I do, but the advantage that we have here is that we can run 1099s out of a separate software. So that's my advantage. The only way I know how to do it is to, well, I know what I do is go in and run, once I have all my vendors set up, I will run a 1099 summary report out of each company file. Okay, so I would run that out of each company file, export it out to Excel, and in that Excel file, after I've run this 1099 report out of each file, I could accumulate and get a total on each one of those vendors. The problem is, I don't believe you can go in. I go to print and e-file 1099 forms. I don't believe you can modify these, but we'll see real quick. I hit continue. I'm pretty sure it's not going to let me modify this. It's not. I hit continue. It's going to want to So it will not let us modify this in any way. So you're either doing 1099s manually. I'm wondering what the right solution is. Again, it's easy for us because we have another software that we can generate these 1099s out of, but that really doesn't offer you any assistance in that regard. I do accumulate the data by exporting my 1099 data out of each company file into Excel. I was thinking as I was working through that, if it would be possible to enter a bill under each one of those vendors at the end of the year, not a bill, but do a, you could probably do a bill under each one of those vendors that you need to change their amounts, put them in, get the vendor's balance to the correct amount, and then go back and void the bill once you process your 1099. That would be one way I would say you could do it. Or, yeah, that's the only way you could do it, but you would need to be very diligent in going back and voiding those bills to generate 1099s, but that would be a way to do it. To get the data into one file or get the totals into one file to put them out. But to spit out the 1099s, but that is the only way I know you'd be able to do it, or get a separate software, or have some place like our firm. We do it for many municipalities. We generate the 1099s for them. We accumulate the data from all the files and generate the 1099s. I guess you just have to weigh out the pros and cons of each and decide what's the easiest way for you to accomplish that. But there's not an easy way to do it. I think the easiest way is to, once you accumulate all your totals, enter that bill in, and then turn around and void that bill out. But it has to be paid though. If the bill is entered, it's not going to add it to the total until the bill is paid. So it's really a weird situation. It might be the best to have a third party do the 1099s for you, actually, depending on the number of QuickBooks files you have. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is one that I know I always struggle with, and it's coming up very quickly, is the budgets. So I wanted to spend some time looking at the budget process. One of the things that I typically do before or when the budget time comes up is I tend to go in and run a profit and loss for the current year. And I can run it here, company and financial. I do a profit and loss standard. I will do a previous year comparison because I like to have 2 years worth of data, previous year. And I will export this out to Excel. And then I set up a budget worksheet so that each one, so I have, let me see if I can do this for you while we're on the call, because this takes a little bit of time, but I am going to, this previous year. Okay, I will export this out, but I want the whole year. So if I do last fiscal year, okay, so this gives me both. So this will give me year to date. January through December will be my year to date. January through December 20 will be my prior year. I will export this report, and you can do that simply by going up here to Excel. If this is not something you use in QuickBooks, you should. This is a wonderful feature. QuickBooks does an amazing job at exporting. So I can create a new worksheet. I can export it out. I'll show you what comes up. And here is the beginnings of my budget worksheet. So I've got my January through December 21. Here's January through December 20. I usually swap these around because I want to see my oldest year to the left. Just depends on how you like to work. Then I will come in here. I will relabel. This will be year to date, actual. This will be prior year, 2020, actual. Open up my columns a little bit. Then I will put in here, I usually do projected year end. So I will go through and add to the current year actual, because it's only going to be through that date. I usually do this in late August, so it'll only be through August. So I'll project out where I think we're going to end up through the end of the year, put that in here. Then I come over and do monthly average, which I find helpful. I put a monthly average column in, so I will take this and divide it by 12 just to get a monthly average. That is really, really helpful when you're working with utility bills, those constant expenses that you have all the time, salaries and wages. You know, what's that running me by month at this point? You know, administrative expenses, those sorts of things where I can see what it actually is. That helps when I am working with the council or the board to determine what the budget number is going to be for the upcoming year. So I'll do a monthly average, and then I will do 2023 budget. Now, the additional thing that, so this ends up being a pretty big worksheet. I always have to print it on legal, and I have to do it in landscape. I usually have mine pulled up on the screen, and I can make notes when I'm meeting with powers to be to make those decisions. But then I always have a column here that says notes. And as I'm going down through, one of the things that I will do, I will make notes. Okay, what is there anything specific in this current year's numbers that we need to factor in, that we need to consider, we need to talk about or think about as they're coming up with budget numbers for the upcoming year? Then I will make notes in this column for things that I know are going to, you know, if we're talking about something specific, expenditures that are specific, capital improvements, whatever the case may be, those are things I need to put in here so I know when I'm posting bills or writing checks, I know exactly where I need to post it in the coming year. So that is essentially what my budget worksheet looks like. Now, mind you, I fine tune it a little bit. It doesn't look this rough. And I will copy columns. I will come over here and copy the columns over. So I have roughly the same formatting. If we do this, so that everything totals out the way it's supposed to, I can come over here and paste, or I think you can do it without the numbers. I don't remember. Yeah. So here's where I want my lines and all to be inconsistent. It just saves me a little bit of time. So I can copy that over. I will put formulas in here in the monthly average to have it automatically calculate that for me. So if I change something or a number changes before we actually start in the budget process, then I have that formula in here so that it automatically calculates or drives from this number here, what I project a year in to be. And again, using your note fields, I always print these out and put them in my budget worksheet, budget notebook, so that I have numbers there. I have notes so that if I have an unusual expenditure come up, I know where it's supposed to post for the coming year. So definitely something to think about. So now once you get through this budget process and you have the numbers, everything's approved, you're ready to get them into QuickBooks. So let's talk about that. So the first thing you're going to do is you are going to come over to company, and we are going to go down to the planning and budgeting, and we are going to set up budgets. Now there is one already in here. Now, one of the things you can do, we can simply, now, if it's not one in for the current year, I'm going to create a new budget. And I want to do it from, now it will come up and say, do you want to specify, you got to specify the year, and is it a profit and loss? Yes, profit and loss budget. I hit next. So do I want to put a budget in by class? If you're running special projects, I don't normally use classes. I don't assign budgets by class for municipalities typically, but I will hit next. Now, this is what's important. Do I want to create the budget from scratch and hard key the numbers in as I'm going through, or do I want to create that budget from the previous year's actual data? I tell you the difference that this makes. If I create it from the previous year's actual data, I am going to see, it is simply going to take my actual data and put it in. But what I'm going to see is those highs and lows in the months. So sometimes when you create a budget from scratch, that's what you got. Okay, you've got nothing other than, okay, I've got to, when I'm entering this budget by month, I've got to be the one to decide, okay, how much am I putting into each one of these months for each line item? So if I come in and do it from, and this is a good example, if I come in and create a new budget, but instead, excuse me, do it from the previous year's actual data. Okay, here's the actual data. Now I can see, this is where money is coming in. These are my high months for real estate tax. So I can round off. A lot of these things are going to be fairly consistent from year to year, your utilities and those sorts of things. So when I get down to utilities, that's another one. I can see where my highs and lows are. How close is the current year number? Okay, so when I enter this budget, I can look at what months are higher than others, what months work is being done in, you know, the supplies like culture and recreation, all those recreation expenses usually flow through in the summer. Your real estate taxes come in certain times a month. Your road work is going to be certain times of the month. Okay, well, let me look at those highs and lows. That's where I know I can work from those numbers. So I know that, let me see. So for March, April is going to be my highest real estate tax month. So let's say for the upcoming year, we didn't have any changes in our real estate tax rate. Okay, so I'm going to round these numbers off so I can actually come in and do that. Get where I want to be. And I can work with my budget from there. So that's how I can do my budget. One, if you're concerned and want to get it as accurate as possible, I find doing it from the prior year data probably one of the easiest ways to do it. Because you're looking at when your highs and lows are in those accounts or those expenses are. If you create it from scratch, and I've done them that way before too. Next, finish. It's telling me a budget already exists. Create new budget. I'm in here playing with this file. Finish. So now, a couple things to think about. Okay, so we've got expenses that we're gonna do this budget from scratch. One of the things you can do is you enter it in the first field. You can copy that number across if your expenses are fairly consistent. You can do that in the other budget that we had. I believe I go back to company planning and budgeting. I'm in the 2023 budget. So let's say for professional fees, we are just going to look at one amount. We want to do 40,000. Let's say I do 5,500 a month is what we're estimating. I can copy that amount across and it'll update it. Then you can fine tune it from there. So just keep that in mind. You have that option to use the copy across. You can adjust row amounts. Month. I have not worked with that before. You can adjust row amounts and increase it first month by a certain percentage or decrease it by a certain percentage. So there's a lot of tools in here. You can always come back in and edit a budget, okay? So even if you're already partway through the year and you need to change your numbers, you can do that. You just simply come back in, select the budget, come back into your budget just by going to company, planning and budgeting, set up budgets, come to your budget. Okay, we're in 2023. If I wanted to come back here and change 2022, I could. Let's say a change took place and you've got to come back in. You had an additional expenditure, council approved, you need to add it in here, and they increased the budget by that amount, or took funds from one budget line and moved it to another. You can always do that. So let's say I want to drop this line down, I can come in and move it to this line. So you can always come in here and modify the budget. It will update when it prints when you hit save and then okay. For reports, for budgets, one of the things I do at the end of the year, once I'm through the budget process, I have the upcoming budget already in and it's approved. If I'm going to put it out, I usually run a copy so they can publish it. I will do a budget overview, hit next, pick my year. There's my report. However, this is by month. What I want to do is select next year. Okay. Still by month. So if you want to get it in total, simply come up to customize the report and select year or total only is the best way. I want to come down here and I want to show, I don't want to show any 0 rows. I'm going to hit OK, hit OK again. Now I've got the budget. This can go out front and be put out for review and approval. And this is what I will actually provide to council for approval. That's the final budget. I always run a copy of this and put it in my budget book for the year. I will make notes or do whatever I need to do to it. But there's your budget. And given that I do this for about 6 company files just for one municipality, it makes it a little bit easier. So I like having a hard copy when I know when we do our insurance renewals, this is always what I provide them. I'll PDF it, put it out on the server, and that way, when it's time to provide to the insurance carrier, I can provide those as well. So it's just simple enough just to send the PDF. The other budget reports, the one that I typically run and like to see all the time is the budget versus, I think it's a budget versus actual. And this will give me the budget, the actual expenses, the budget, what I'm over or under. Now you can get, I don't necessarily like to see the dollars over or the percent over or under, but what I will do is come in here and select, don't want to see the differences, but I do want to see how we're faring from a year total. again, I always like to see, now I'm gonna point something out here in a minute. So this gives me through June 30th. So here I've got my January through June total numbers. I've got it by month. I can see what months are messing me up and what months aren't, or what months are faring well for me. And this is my budget for January through June. But I really want to see the annual budget. So the way to get that is to go to the profit and loss budget performance, I believe. That will give me the annual budget. And it does. So this gives me my year to date. If I'm looking at January through July, this is my budget, a year to date budget, January through July. This is my annual budget. How am I faring? How are things turning out? Am I really far off? Am I on track to hit the budget? Well, now, something I want to show you real quick too, that I already see on this one. See how this has a $0 amount in here, but there is no budget line for that. Usually I will export this out to Excel and add some notes and so forth to it, but I will highlight that, or I will plug zeros. You can also go back into the budget, 361, that's account 361,320. And if I come back over to my budget, 361,320. So I don't have anything on that, but I hate seeing those blanks. I can do this. I can come back in, copy that across, hit save, okay. Now refresh my report. And if I come down to 361,320, now I've eliminated those blanks in my report and I've gotten zeros. No budget line. I mean, there's no budget amount. Now, if I come in here and hit non-zero, this is where you're going to see the difference. Hit okay. Okay. Now it took out the ones that had all zeros. That 361,320 is now gone because it didn't have anything in there to begin with. So that's a nice way to clean that report up. Here's another one that's got blanks. I hate seeing those blanks in there, but I'm a little OCD about the reporting. Another one here. So I like to go in and clean those up. Or it makes me question, do I have something here posted to the wrong account? Is this in the right expense account? Should it be to, this is minor machinery and equipment, should it be down here? Maybe I just have it on the wrong line. It's a good way to check behind yourself and make sure you're posting things correctly. Always compare your year-to-date budget to your annual and to your year-to-date actual activity. And I think that that's helpful. So that's a lot of information about budgets. Any questions on that? I know that was a lot of information. Of course, it's that time is coming up when we have to start working on the budgets and getting our wish list together and so forth. But I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go over that. And there were a couple questions that we had on that came through when you guys registered. It's definitely something I wanted to touch on. Good, Kimberly, I'm glad you liked that and it was helpful. Let me see. Help with trial balances and balancing account. So trial balances and balancing accounts. So I'm not so sure. Now we can get a trial balance. It's not something that I work with very often. I usually work with a P&L and a balance sheet, typically what I do, but I do know that the auditors work with the trial balance a lot. And the one place to get that, you're not going to find it up here in your regular financial company and financial reports. You will get that under the accountant and taxes. That's where you're going to get your trial balance. So remember that if your auditor ever asks for that, that's where you want to pull that from. And that's going to give you your trial balance. You can look last year, this fiscal year, this is last month. And you'll notice you got a ton of zeros here. So let's do last fiscal year. Okay, again, ton of zeros, small amounts in these accounts, customized report. We're going to get rid of those zeros. Hit OK. Now look at the difference in that report. Cleaned it up. Huge difference. Much smaller report. Now you can see what balances. The things to remember, especially when you're working with an audit, they typically work with round numbers. I go out and meet with a lot of boroughs and townships after the auditors have done their work and the audit's done, and someone may need help with entering journal entries, which I enjoy doing. So I can go out and I can usually get the detail from, if we've done the audit, our auditors, and so auditors work with round dollar numbers. And when you're adjusting your accounts payables, accounts receivables, or making adjustments to accounts, a lot of times you'll see those little miscellaneous pennies sitting there in the accounts if they're clearing out an account. So you'll want to go back and ask your auditors for the exact amounts. Otherwise, you're going to end up with little amounts sitting in some of the accounts, and that drives me bonkers. So you can ask for that and ask for the detail on it, and they should be able to provide that. The auditors can typically be great to work with, and are very helpful with that regard. Now, one of the last things I've seen here is working with escrow accounts, and that is a pretty complex topic to get into. We did talk about the budget versus actual reports, but the escrow accounts, if you have escrow accounts for your municipality, you need to be setting those up. I'm assuming that they are set up when that escrow comes in as a separate checking account, I would hope, or it would be nice to have those set up separately. But if not, you should have a liability account also for that escrow account, because it is a liability until those funds are used up. I'm not sure how much detail I can get in without a little bit more information, because that's something that is a little particular. It depends on what type of escrow it is, what you have going on. So those are kind of a specific topic to talk about. So probably the last thing, and I know we're coming close on our time, but one of the last things I wanted to spend a few minutes on is, if you are working with QuickBooks 21 or QuickBooks 2020, I guess most of you are, because if you haven't found out yet, QuickBooks Desktop has now gone subscription based. So I wanted to give you a heads up on that. So if you're running QuickBooks 2020, Desktop 2020, by this coming May of 2023, you are going to need to upgrade. And it is going to be subscription based, period. There is no way around it. Every year you will pay a fee for QuickBooks. That is just what they're doing. There's no more being able to purchase it. I know in the past we could get it and you could ride on it for 3 years before you would have to upgrade again. You just don't have that option anymore. So I wanted to make you aware of that. We can get you, if you wanted to contact our firm, one of our ProAdvisors can get you a discount on your first year renewal. Like if you have to renew in May of 2023, we can get you a discount on that one when you purchase the subscription, the first year's subscription, but then after that, it would be at the regular price. So feel free to reach out to us. We can help you with getting the renewal. But then after that, it is going to be the regular list price of whatever QuickBooks Desktop is going to be from year to year. There are a couple advantages. One is that you are always going to be on the most current version. They do provide support. Now, whether or not you want to use them for support is entirely up to you. Just remember that when you contact Intuit or QuickBooks for support, one, make sure that's who you're calling. We had an issue, I believe it was last year, where some people went out to a website thinking they were getting Intuit support, contacted the number, and it looked legit. contacted the number. They got support. The guy said, oh, okay, well, let's get access to your file and I can give you a hand. And then they ended up holding their file hostage. And it compromised the data in there. So you have to make sure that you're going through an legitimate Intuit site. The best way to get help if you're going to contact QuickBooks for support is to contact them through the help screen within your QuickBooks file. Do not go out to the internet and search for a number. Of course, we're always available if you need support. You can always reach out to any of our offices. We have ProAdvisors in each office. I'm out of the Chambersburg office and work with many municipalities. So feel free to reach out to us. The thing to remember also is that they do not have insight into Intuit will not know about the DCED chart of accounts. They do not have insight into that specific type of accounting. Municipalities, townships, boroughs do have some specifics as it relates to your accounting that you have to keep in mind. So my recommendation would be to reach out to someone, one of the ProAdvisors in our office, and let them help you, because we'll have a little bit more insight and be able to help you with your type of books. Okay, so I did get one that says, I have my QuickBooks set for automatic updates, but it does not update automatically. Can you review that in case I'm doing something wrong? If you're running payroll, that's typically what the automatic updates are for. Now, it should be doing the updates for your version of QuickBooks, but it will not necessarily update the program. It should come up and tell you, yes, it is for payroll. I'll be honest with you, we've had some issues with payroll. If you go in to run payroll, do an update regardless, every time you go in to run payroll, because we've had instances where they are set to auto update. They are not doing it. And I've gotten calls that, oh, well, I've had no tax withheld from any of my paychecks. Then you have to go back, you have to delete payroll and rerun it. Do a payroll update and then rerun the payroll, which is not fun. Okay, I got another question, which is what I was kind of saving some time at the end here for. So perfect. How do you enter a voided check that was not already entered into QuickBooks? Good question. Good question. I just had this scenario yesterday, actually. So what I do is I do have an account in my chart of accounts that would be 999.000. Right there. I have an account, it's an other expense account, and I have it set up for voided checks. I hate gaps in transaction numbers. I hate gaps in my check numbers. If you run a check report and you'll show gaps in between your check numbers if you voided a check and it's not entered in QuickBooks. So set up an account as an other expense, 999.00 voided checks. Then what I do is go into banking, write checks. I will go in, select the account, the correct account, enter the check number, the date it was voided, and in here, I have a vendor set up as void. Leave it zero amount, it automatically posts. I have the vendor set to automatically post to 999.00. So I don't even have to enter the account down here and hit save and close. Now it will, one, show, if you was to run a check report, it'll show void in that check number. So you can see all your checks are in, you have no gaps, and you can go back and look and see what checks you have voided. So that's the easiest way. That's an excellent question. I do get that a lot, and that is how I like to handle it. So in summary, run your updates on payroll every time before you go in to run it. Just do a manual, and I don't have payroll in this file, but do a help update QuickBooks Desktop is where you can go to update to the newest version. In QuickBooks, you should be able, that auto update, I'm not sure what it's going to give me when I go into this. Check under your help screen about the auto update, because they do have some information in here that would be, may be able to answer your question with that. This will tell you how to update the software. So if you want to get the discount, feel free to reach out to one of us. But it does look like we're running out of time. Just a few minutes left. Again, don't forget about the survey that you have. That'll get sent out. Any information you guys put in there is super helpful as we work towards the next webinar that we have. Hopefully I was able to answer some questions and give you guys some good information. If you have any additional questions, please, I'll give it another minute or so. You can throw it out there. Otherwise, that's about the extent of what I am going to cover today. But I appreciate everyone joining in. And thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that you find them helpful. Don't forget, we're here if you need us. Always reach out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day, a good rest of the week. Stay cool out there. It's going to be hot. And there is a note. Will you be sending us a copy of this video? Yes. I don't think we're going to be sending a copy of the video, but it should be put out on our website. I don't know if Christina's still here or not. Christina, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I will send the link to the recording. It'll just be probably a good hour, just because it has to process and export and all of that. So this afternoon, you'll receive the survey link as well as the video recording link.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day, everyone.